Extreme transformative change is coming, raising existential questions such as, what does it mean to be human? What values do we have? Or even better, what values we wish we have? An essay titled Keep the Future Human by Anthony Aguirre, a co-founder of the Future of Life Institute, explores our current development path of artificial intelligence, the implications it will have for our geopolitical situation, for our societies. And they lay out in this essay a case for why we need a regulatory framework. Because, I quote, super intelligent systems could supplant not individuals, but companies, nations, our civilization as a whole. What do they mean by this? Right? They're not talking about AI taking my job away, but about upending civilization as we know it. I've read the 60-page essay, its footnotes, and many of the extended resources. I internalized the ideas, breathed in the images painted by these words, and expressed the emotions through several works of art. Because I think these ideas deserve to be expressed creatively. And because they've wrote this important essay and forgot to put any images in beyond one Venn diagram. Researchers, am I right? Why listen to me? Why should you give me some of your valuable attention? Right now, they're like mega companies fighting for it. Why should you listen to, dare I say, my take on existential risk? Like, on the one side, I'm not a world-leading AI researcher, such as Geoffrey Hinton, who co-developed the technology that's powering all kinds of modern LLMs, who got a Nobel Prize in physics for his work, and who left Google to freely warn us, you and me, about the existential dangers of AI. So I'm not him, but I did publish a few papers on global catastrophic risk. And you might say, why should you look at my art? Well, I'm not a world-accomplished artist, but I've done an art installation. I've done a short story and a vision for the future. And by the time you're watching this, I've done my first YouTube video. So I'm happy to say I feel comfortable traversing both worlds, both the academic and the artistic. And I'm happy to bring them both together to provide a new perspective for you. So I invite you to buckle up and join me on this aesthetic existential exploration. The essay starts out with the things you need to know about AI neural networks. Almost all salient modern AI is based on neural networks. These are mathematical computational structures represented by a very large set of numbers that perform a training task well. These weights are crafted by iteratively tweaking them so that the neural network improves a numerical score defined toward performing well at one or more tasks. This process is known as training the neural network. Let's unpack that together. Neural networks can be envisioned as a set of connected diodes. These diodes represent abstract knowledge, but for simplicity, let's say these are words. We want these connections to be in such a way that if we put in a certain amount of text here on the left side, we get the correct answer on the right side. Let's have a simple example. Say we asked the neural net, name a red flower, and we wanted to give the answer, rose. Then for that to happen, we need to adjust the diodes in such a way that when the concepts red and flower are activated, that in the final layer of diodes, the one representing rose is more likely to get activated as well. This dialing of the connections is the training. So great, now our neural net has learned one thing, but we wanted to learn many concepts. So what AI companies do is they automate this process of adjusting the diodes and let it run trillions of times, such that the model learns on the entire corpus of the internet. All of Wikipedia, millions of books, you get the idea. This is also why these training runs can consume as much energy as entire cities, by the way. Well, and at the end of this, we get something like ChatGPT, an AI with which you can talk about all kinds of topics. The important part here is for us to understand that we do not fully understand how the AIs generate their answer and what they end up learning in the process. In comparison to traditional software, AIs are not coded, but they are grown. That was actually really shocking for me to learn. We are growing alien intelligences that think very much unlike we do, and not like a calculator either. This has inspired one of my first drawings, titled A Smart Yield. And just like with crops, we know we can give them fertilizer and water to help them grow big and strong. To get a lush broccoli, we don't actually have to understand what happens on a cell-by-cell basis. But with today's AI companies, they are pouring like ever more data and compute onto their models, also without specifically understanding what's happening on the inside. But wait, you might object. Biologists do actually understand plants on a molecular level. I would say, fair. We've had modern biology for decades, and nowadays we can sequence their genome. But if you allow me to stretch that metaphor a bit, our understanding of AIs, which by the way we call interpretability research, is more like understanding a single blade of grass, while around us, as these models are growing, lush tropical rainforest is exploding. So why does it matter that AIs are grown and not fully comprehensible to us? Well, it means that we cannot trust them to be fully aligned with our values and requests. And you might have already noticed it opened up this big question on the side, like, to whose values? This like big societal consideration I want to come back to at the end of this video. But by now you might have heard about AIs lying, manipulating, deceiving, or in some cases even inducing psychosis into their users. And the important thing I want you to understand is AI companies did not plan for this. For them, this is a PR disaster, right? They cannot remove this from the model. If you want to have an awesome AI that can write you a fan fiction story, it needs to understand villains and drama, full of like lying, manipulating, and deceiving. If you remove all of that from the training data so the AI doesn't end up with those skills, an unfortunate fact is you make it dumber and less useful. So they include it in the training data. And that means we get AIs that might be potentially dangerous. And you say, Aaron, like, how dangerous can they be, right? They might say offensive things. They might insult people. Or they tell a lie, right? But we had fake news, false information on the internet forever. Well, I think it's time that we really talk about intelligence and the magnitude of risk here. So let's talk about intelligence. This is going to be an interesting segue, which I will tie back to the entire main essay in a moment. So in 1999, Ray Kurzweil, an inventor, thinker, and futurist, predicted that an AI would be able to pass the Turing test by the year 2029. Passing the Turing test would mean that an AI can communicate by text indistinguishable from a human. For this, it would have needed to master three things: language, common sense reasoning, and knowing when to hide a lot of capabilities where you're already superhuman. Anyhow, what does he say about intelligence? He describes it as information processing. And he states that there have been 4 key epochs of it so far, which I've expressed in our friendly neighborhood existentially confused skull. Epoch 1 simply describes the early days of our universe after the Big Bang, when atoms formed. Eventually those atoms formed into molecules that could represent information. And then several billion years ago, molecules got complex enough to define an entire organism in one molecule. Thus, the second epoch and life began. In the third epoch, animals described by DNA then formed brains, which themselves stored and processed information. This in my picture is the lizard brain, or the amygdala with its fight or flight kind of thoughts. In the fourth epoch, we got our higher level cognitive abilities. We formed complex societies, and our neocortex came along. We invented tools to store and manipulate even more information, from papyrus to hard drives. The same brain got us from sharpening stone axes to landing a rocket on the moon. The key thing to get at here is that intelligence equals capabilities. Many might argue that we clearly are dumb in a lot of ways. The way we treat our environment, we seem to struggle to cooperate and help each other. But there's no doubting that we are the major transformative force on this planet at this moment. And that came from these information processes. Throughout evolution, our brains got bigger, roughly by around 1 cubic inch of brain matter every 100,000 years. And somewhere along those lines, there was a phase shift where apes went from covering one or more ecological niches to suddenly conquering the entire planet. And I think we are living through the next phase shift right now, as computers are developing at an ever faster rate, surpassing human capabilities in ever more areas. So where's all of this compute leading to? Where from here? That's a sense of what AGI would be. And creating AGI is the publicly stated goal of many AI companies. They want to replace human workers. Instead of going for an individual job market or an industry, they're going for the entire global economy. Hey, that's a way better business model. And another good framing the essay provides is that of AGI standing for an AI that has high autonomy, high generality, and high intelligence. Companies are not there yet, but they're in an intense arms race to get there, with many stating we might be 2 to 3 years away until we see AGI. Currently, hundreds of billions of dollars are being invested into this technology, with a lot of resources and attention going towards it. We are in a wartime effort. But not only companies are interested in this, nations are heavily invested as well. Because when militaries hear about an extraordinary, potent, catastrophically risky technology, their focus is not on how do we avoid those risks, but rather how do we get this first. With people like Vladimir Putin being on record stating, the one who becomes the leader in the sphere will be the ruler of the world. For them, intelligence means power. And the essay lays out how these dynamics can increase the probability of a large-scale war. While reading these chapters, I kind of felt dizzy. I got like whiplash by visions of us curing all diseases and aging, inventing new sustainable energy sources, or building superhuman support and coordination systems. And all of that mixed with like geopolitical tensions, arms race dynamics, and technological risks that we could avoid if we would just be careful. But instead we're getting like a few thousand people rushing ahead to be the first at some sort of finish line. I tried to capture this mind-boggling feeling by warping the perspective here in the next piece, Racing the Descent, where we have tech guys chasing or being chased by a vision of superintelligence. In Silicon Valley, there are some people literally referring to the current AI development as building the machine god. And spiritual figures are often displayed with a sort of halo. So I thought it would be funny if like this AI overlord would have not one, but 3 halos in the form of the Wi-Fi symbol. But at the end of all of these reality-distorting narratives risk await, which we are currently recklessly approaching, and why we need international regulation. And to that I will get in a moment, but first, what does all of this imply for the billions of people who are not participating in this arms race? Basically, a lot of aspects of our lives will change. According to Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, we will soon get intelligence too cheap to meter. Which raises the question, what do we do with free intelligence? Well, let's search the web and find out. Meta's goal for AI users is to enhance user engagement and interaction on its platforms by introducing AI-generated profiles that can mimic real accounts, provide personalized content, and interact with users. Excuse me, what a dystopian nightmare! The goal here is not the well-being of users or societies, but user engagement for ad revenue. With such a misaligned goal in mind, we will get like social media platforms that will make the discussions around filter bubbles look like child's play in comparison. Most people will be exposed to, let's say, 5% user content by real people they know, whereas 95% of the user content they will see will be generated and specifically targeted to them. In the past, it was like too expensive to individually create content just for one person. But in the future, it will just be a feature. And as a result, our friends, our families, and broader communities who are on these platforms, because after all, we are like social beings, they will be vulnerable to social isolation and algorithmic manipulation. Simultaneously, we have shortening attention spans and a dopamine-addicted society, a trend which could be negatively amplified if we get unaligned AGI systems, which I quote, could flood society's information and communication systems with completely realistic yet false media, making it impossible to tell what is trustworthy or not. By the way, for a depiction of this social desolation, look no further than my favorite Polish artist, Buckley, and his untitled work from 1978. And with the decreasing capability to make sense of the world, ever more people will turn to AI for advice, right? Outsourcing their critical thinking skills. This might lead for our brain muscles to atrophy, so to say. And that will then lead to ever more human disempowerment. We're kind of already seeing something like that happening with the shortening of our attention spans. And in addition, early findings show that heavy AI use is linked with a reduction in critical thinking skills. Coming back to the earlier quote of intelligence too cheap to meter, I asked myself, what would such a world feel like? And I came up with this alien landscape full of towering intelligences that cover the landscape as far as the eye can see, with an algorithmic overlord wandering its streets, intruding its thoughts, and humans nowhere to be seen. I know this is a very ugly vision of the future, and unfortunately we haven't covered even half of the issues and problems the essay talks about. But on the fortunate side, we do not yet know which path the future will take, and we need hopeful visions of the future as well to help us get there. The essay lays out a path how we could get there with tool AI, a way we could maybe get some of the benefits of AI without many of the downfalls. For that, we have to look at the previous Venn diagram. Many of the concerns the essay writes about are in the intersection of high autonomy, high generality, and high intelligence. But the essay also claims that many of the benefits we want from AI systems, like innovation, research progress, we can get with very narrow systems. Imagine a medical AI tool, a simple image classifier. This would be an AI system which would have been trained only in medical data and the information whether the cell it's looking at has cancer or not. It would look at hundreds of thousands of these pictures and would become superhuman in identifying which cells have cancer or will develop cancer. But if you would deploy such a system in the real world, it would fail. It would be like a fish trying to climb a tree, right? It doesn't know about language, about navigating a 3D space. It would just fail. So there's very few of the downside risk here. This is what we call a narrow AI tool, and your medical doctor could still use it to inform her or his decision and help you get better treatment. This is an example of an AI tool which we wouldn't want to outright ban. This is why the essay creates different regulatory frameworks for the different intersections of capabilities. And we need these regulatory frameworks to be implemented both national and on an international level. And your political representatives need your help. We already have stories from people who try to advocate for these regulatory frameworks, but they do not yet have the public or political support needed to bring it up. So we just looked at the governmental level of change, how you can influence the world. But let's look at other layers how you could get involved. The commercial layer of change describes how our purchasing decisions can have a positive impact on the world. For example, we can vote with our money. We can decide not to buy any products from AI companies unless they can verifiably prove that their systems are acting ethically and are safe to operate. Alternatively, we could follow open source development projects where the developers are making sure that no copyrighted data has been used in the training of their AIs. And on the cultural layer of change, I invite you and your communities to have a conversation about this topic. What does ethical AI usage even look like? What are new norms we might need? An example would be the usage of transparent AI statements. In the description below, you will find all the ways AI has helped me in the creation of this video. For example, YouTube will have automatically created the subtitles, and I just needed to spot check them. But I didn't use AI in the creation of the scripts, in the word I said, or in any of the drawings I did. And with that, I want to wrap up this aesthetic existential exploration and revisit the website Keep the Future Human. We need to create visions of a positive future for humanity in a world with AI, and ideas for how to get there. We each need to share our perspective on what a human future with AI should look like, while its trajectory is still undecided. We need to inform the people around us about the dangers of human-level AI and the fact that AI companies actually are trying to build it. Creating this video was quite the challenge. We had so much more to talk about, but only such an amount of time to talk about it. So I invite you to have a look at the further reading. I will link to some references in the description. And thank you for your attention. Keep the future human.